Hello and welcome to the Dinosaw for week 50, another 7 curious, interesting things I saw last week. So let's crack on. The first one is Trickshot. Now this is a startup, it's not actually an app that's available just yet, but I really like one of the cool features in there. Now I've seen a lot of apps that do motion tracking or also take mocaps from sports events or even just do it visually, but none of them really have this feature. So this feature allows you to measure the goal in your local park, then you can replay the goal in augmented reality. Now what I'm hoping it does as well, which is kind of cool, I'm hoping it senses when you kick the ball and then triggers the animation. So I don't have a huge amount of information on it, but I've just not really seen that feature where you can actually replay it in your local park against a real goal. There you go, that's Trickshot. Look out for that one. A startup happening near you. So this is Meta and the EU. Now the EU have ruled. Now this is word on the street. It's not, I don't think I've seen it officially just yet, but it's been reported in some fairly weighty news sources that EU have finally buttoned down the law. So 2018 when GDPR came in, you needed to get explicit permission for advertising to be used using personal data. Facebook have always put that in the terms and conditions. So they've sort of sidestepped it by saying, well, if you signed up to the terms and conditions, clearly you're giving us active consent. However, it need to be separate active consent as well. And the EU have said you cannot now hide it in the terms and conditions. It needs to be explicit, and you need to also be able to opt out at any point as well. So that has now got 30 days to come into law. Apparently, the Irish equivalent of essentially the Information Commissioner's Office, whatever, has been supporting this, so has got 30 days to make sure that they actually comply with that. Now, this is going to obviously have a big effect on Meta's advertising revenue. If you can't do personalized advertising, as we've seen with Apple when they said, would you like us to track you across the internet? People overwhelmingly said no. So I think if you got the same pop-up in Facebook, you probably would do the same. So we'll see how that goes on. Look out for that mid-January when that comes into fruition. This is WebXR, but also in the MetaQuest browser. So I'll explain those words because they might be a bit confusing. The MetaQuest browser is a browser within the Oculus Meta Quest, should we say, the headset. So you can then go into a web browser. Now, WebXR is a way of doing virtual reality in a web browser. So it sends all of the X and Y and Z coordinates of your your headset to your browser, so you can replicate things like a virtual reality or augmented reality. Now, previously to that, it was only really in one kind of siloed website. Now you can actually move between those experiences and apparently also on different websites. So you can then move interoperably between lots of different experiences, which is kind of what the metaverse is supposed to be. So although a lot of virtual reality stuff at the moment is you download it on a certain platform, this might make it finally something that is open to all and interoperable and transversing anything wherever you want. So the metaverse might be in a web browser. The UK government have this really good feature. Now, the only reason I saw this or even mentioned it was about really good customer service. So it's called Tell Us Once. Now, if you have had a bereavement in the family in the UK, you can go onto the service and it does all the good stuff for you. So it will then basically register the death. It will then opt you out or opt whoever has passed away out of council tax and tell all the other services that are connected to that as well. Now, clearly it's not particularly a pleasant event, but it's made much more efficient and better by having this kind of horizontal services integration. So there's quite a lot of companies out there who do this really badly. So I thought the government actually leading the way on tell us once and we'll do all the things you need to do to cancel whatever it is. Also works for broadcasters or anything that you've got a subscription to. If you've ever had to unregister yourself from something like that, then you know how difficult that can be. So the Tell Us Once service from the government. Who'd have thought? I'd be featuring that. Talking about governments, so this is the EU, and they have the Global Gateway Initiative. Now, the Global Gateway Initiative is something like 400 billion euros of investment to try and connect the world to Europe using technology platforms. Now, roughly 400,000 euros of that, or about £330,000, was spent on a 24-hour metaverse party, where obviously lots of people, especially 18 to 35-year-olds who they were trying to attract and talk about this message, obviously saying EU is the right place if you're a funky young person that uses the metaverse. However, 5 people apparently turned up to it, and after about an hour there was only 1 person left. So the old advertising adage, which is right person, right message, right time, you probably didn't get any of those right in this. Obviously I'm just rubbing it in a little bit, and obviously nobody really needs that, needs supporting, but that's probably a colossal waste of £330,000 right now. There you go. So if you're planning on doing this, look at this example and maybe do something different. There you go. Diarrhea detection. The first thing I should say is, by the way, I didn't know there was a difference in spelling. This is, as you see on the device, that's the American spelling, and the UK spelling has an O in it. Who'd have thought? However, this is a diarrhea detector. Other thing I should say is, whoever put the bolts on the buttons on here, well done for lining up the bolts, the nuts on the top of that, so that they're all horizontal. I do appreciate that. However, this is all about detecting the sound of diarrhea to then track how many instances of diarrhea are happening. Now, why is this useful? You might think, well, that's a bit funny. It's not. It's quite literally deadly serious. So that if there is an outbreak of diarrhea, then that's usually with the spread of infectious diseases like cholera, for instance. So if you are in a place that is potentially at risk of cholera, then this could actually keep track of how many people are having instances of diarrhea. And therefore, if it reaches a certain threshold, then you probably need to take some different actions. So that's what it's for. So well done to, I assume, Gatelin from the Georgia Institute of Technology. I like that. Good 3D printing as well. Well done. And finally, we have the ATM that actually shows you the balance. So this is actually an art installation. It's not actually an ATM, but this was by New York, let's say, art collective Mischief, and they do a lot of these sorts of things. What this does is you put in your cards, it then reads your balance, it then puts your balance on the screen with a photograph of you, and there's essentially a leaderboard. So it's putting sort of transparency, but also it's quite vulgar at the same time, especially in the cost of living crisis in 2022. But I did think that where I was going with this is like the transparency of money is really important. Strikes in the UK on the people want more money, etc., etc. Well, what is everybody actually earning right now? So I thought that would be quite interesting to look at as well. So there you go. But I thought, interesting and playful, but this DJ, can't remember his name, terribly sorry, $3.49 million in their checking account. Makes you think. Hopefully that was interesting, hopefully it was useful. If it was, give it a like, share it with somebody awesome, and I will see you next week.